Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of HSP TV. I am your host, Barbara, and today I am joined by the lovely Karin Goldgruber. And this evening, we are going to be talking about EFT, emotional freedom techniques, and how it can benefit especially highly sensitive people. So I am dying to dive into this topic because I think it's an awesome one, and I'm so very pleased that you're here today, Karin.
Thanks for having me today. I'm excited about our conversation as well.
Right? Because we both work with highly sensitive people and we both work also with emotional freedom techniques. So I think we have lots and lots of things to talk about. But for the people that are tuning in, that are watching, that are listening, that are not so familiar with both EFT, emotional freedom techniques, as well as HSP, highly sensitive people, it might be good to do a step back and first discuss a little bit, what is a highly sensitive person?
As Elaine Aron, who did all the research and coined the phrase highly sensitive people, says that a highly sensitive person has a very sensitive nervous system, is aware of the subtleties in their environment and in their surroundings, and is easily overstimulated and overwhelmed in highly stimulating environments. So it's almost like our filters are a little bit different. We feel so many things, notice them. And then I think the main quality or key quality of an HSP, the short form for a highly sensitive person, is how we process the information. We reflect on it, we elaborate on it, we make many associations, which leads to a really strong intuition. And so that, I think, is in a nutshell what an HSP is.
Yes,
anything
you're absolutely
that you
right.
wanted to add?
Yeah, well, they did research to how to tell the difference or to prove actually that it really exists. Because there are a lot of people that tell me, oh, but everybody gets highly sensitive when they're stressed, which is not true. Because high sensitivity is something that's hereditary. So you get it from your family. It could be your mom or your dad. I also sometimes hear, but I don't recognize it in either of my parents. So how can this be? Well, sometimes it can be disguised. And especially previous generations were taught to not be different from everybody else, so they can have severely suppressed it. But what they did is they put a highly sensitive person under the MRI scan and they put a non-highly sensitive person under the MRI scan. And they exposed them both to exactly the same images, videos, sound clips, everything. And what they saw was that for the highly sensitive person, a lot more areas of the brain light up than for the not highly sensitive person. So how I always explain it is our nervous system is wired a little bit different. And because of that, our sensory antennas, so hearing, seeing, smelling, feeling, tasting, the sensory antenna is a lot more finely tuned. So what that means is that in the exact same situations as they've now proven with the MRI, as a highly sensitive person, we literally hear more, see more, smell more, taste more, and feel more. So that means that a lot more information is coming in. And I think that that makes it very obvious why we can become overwhelmed, right? Because in the same type of situations, the same types of environment, it's so much more, everything that we get within ourselves. And you already said, and that's true, that we also process things on a different level. So usually we process quicker, which is a good thing since we get more information, but we also are very good at connecting dots, seeing cause and effect, seeing how things work together. So we have this amazing ability to not only process more information, but also getting it in and processing it quicker so that we can get to certain end results or maybe with problem solving much faster than other people can.
And you know what I also like about it is that we can kind of see in the future because of our way of thinking and processing. We can kind of think 4 or 5 steps ahead of time, and
Yes.
we can anticipate problems that could arise. And the funny thing is often, and I don't know if you had that experience, is you mentioned it and you said, you know what, if we do this and this, this and this could happen. And then people would say, oh no, we are fine. And then go ahead, it happens, and everybody's like really surprised, and you're like, yeah, I mentioned it to you, but you just didn't listen.
Yeah, or the response that I often get is similar to that, but then it's like, oh, here she is again, Miss Negativity. When you say, oh, this solution is not going to work because you are already 5 steps ahead and you think, well, oh no, that's not going to solve anything. And when you then voice that, it's sometimes being met with a lot of negativity. Like you're always the downer, you're always the negative person. Why can't you ever be on board with the solutions that we come up with? And it has nothing to do with negativity. It has to do with our ability to very quickly see cause and effect in relationships with each other, so that we see in the future and very quickly can see if something's going to work, yes or no.
Yeah. And lots of time and money could be saved in businesses if people would listen more to highly sensitive people. What I also find often, like you said, people won't listen or won't give the HSP a little bit more time to processing, and like it's like, okay, we need to make a solution, a decision right now, but sometimes just putting it aside for a day gives you the opportunity to think those things through and to come to better solutions. And often I find HSPs are too quiet and don't say anything with those things because of previous experiences where they were like not listened to serious or put down. And
yes, and that's indeed what happens, because we are not forefront people. We are not people who push our opinion no matter what. So we want to share our information, but if people put us down or constantly tell us we are negative, then eventually we just don't say anything anymore, because it hurts when people say, oh, negative Nelly is here again, or well, can't you ever be on board with our solutions and just try and be supportive, or other things that they can say. It's sort of, well, so not sort of at all. It hurts, depending on how it's being said, and that makes us sort of retreat in our shell. And 70% of the highly sensitive people are already introverted. So you can imagine if you're an introverted person and you find sort of the courage to speak up and let yourself be heard, and then you're basically put in your place again, that next time you will think twice about voicing your opinion. And if you then magically or heroically dare to say it again and you're being put down again, then you won't do it the third time.
Yeah, and I think many of us, I used to do it much more when I was younger. If there were conversations like that, you start analyzing and dissecting those conversations. And could I have said this, or could I have said that? And why did they say this? And sometimes we do read between the lines when there's nothing written. It's quite interesting.
Yes, but that's also one of our gifts. So a lot of these things are both gifts and pitfalls. And the fact that we feel so much, it can be a pitfall. I see that with highly sensitive people who either don't know that they are a highly sensitive person or who haven't mastered their gifts yet. What I see with them is that it's just pure overload and they don't know how to handle it, and they're at the end of their rope and there's no more elasticity in their elastic band, and they in general don't really like their life. And that's usually what happens when you don't really know how to handle it well. That's part of what I do. But the moment that you do know how you work and how everything is for you, then you can start to see it as a gift, and you can start to learn to work with it as a gift, and then you can reap the benefits of the same sort of traits. Because I don't know how that is for you, Karin, but I'm dying to find out. For me, within my profession, what I do when I help people, my gifts are a tremendous asset. Being able to read between the lines, hearing the things that people are not voicing, but they are definitely saying, help me in finding what the bottleneck is in whatever issue that they have, for instance.
I agree. And sometimes just like noticing subtle things, just twitching or the eye movement or something, and picking up on those subtleties, and then being gentle and slow enough to acknowledge those and not just continue on with the conversation. It's like, okay, what happened there? I noticed, a little change. And then when we work with HSPs, for them to be heard, and that somebody really acknowledges their feelings, because many of us, we were always told, you're too sensitive, you're just exaggerating, or you're just imagining, oh, it's not so bad, don't be so stupid.
Don't take things so personal. You need to really grow a thicker skin.
Yes. And you know what, I sometimes compare it to, because I live in Canada, right? So I speak English. And in the beginning, when I went to Canada, sometimes people, when they noticed that I wouldn't understand, that I couldn't understand what they said, they would speak louder to me. Just if you're repeating the same thing louder, I'm not going to understand the word that I don't know.
No.
And so that's sometimes for people that are not highly sensitive. And I think it's really important also to mention that sensitivity is also a scale. Like, everybody is sensitive.
Yes,
it's just
to some degree, yes.
It's just different. So, but when we're talking about our feelings, sometimes for the others, they can't comprehend that strength or size of feelings, and then we try sometimes to make our feelings bigger, like those Canadians talking louder to me. But if you don't know the words, how can you understand it, even if it's louder and bigger?
I often tell them, you're just repeating the exact same thing, but then just louder or exactly the same doesn't make that I understand it the second time. If I already didn't understand the words the first time, repeating it won't help.
But then as HSP, sometimes we tried, and sometimes I think it was a way of trying to be understood. Sometimes we automatically made things a little bit bigger, maybe used bigger words than it sometimes was, in an attempt to be heard. Or we would always try to, suppress our feelings. So we wouldn't be called, oh, you're like overreacting and whatever, but then you're pushing it down, and then there's a point where, and then exactly what you tried to avoid happened again.
Yes.
This big show of emotions.
That is a very good point that you're bringing up here, because a lot of us, especially when we don't know that we're highly sensitive, or when we are still figuring out what it means, we want to please other people because we either want to fit in, or we want to feel like we belong, or we want to be accepted, or we want to be hired for a job, something like that. And what then happens is that we turn ourselves into a version of ourselves that we are not. I always call that masks. And when I was younger, I had multiple masks. I had a mask that I showed to my friends. I had a mask that I showed to my family. I had a mask that I showed to my colleagues. So there was work Barbara and friends Barbara and family Barbara. And they were different versions of me, but not really me. They were behaviors that I was doing in the hopes of fitting in, or because I thought it was expected of me, especially with regards to family, right? Being the good daughter, or being the good employee, or being the good friend, stuff like that. And that, in the end, bites us in the ass, because when we are not being our true selves and we have all these masks, it's also all these balls that we are having to keep up in the air. And it becomes exhausting, deeply exhausting, to always pretend to be someone else. And then we have these desires to have people think well of us. And so what other people think about us and what other people say about us becomes extremely important, probably also from a place of wanting to belong. So that often triggers people-pleasing behavior.
Definitely, yeah. I've experienced that too. And I think often this people pleasing, then you feel like you're saying being one thing with one person and then with the other, and then you feel like, oh, I'm fake, there's something what's going on with me. You're like, oh, this doesn't feel right. It's like, oh.
And then we can have things like imposter syndrome or low self-esteem, trouble with confidence, for instance, when we are not being ourselves.
And you know what? I was thinking about that actually for quite a long time. When I was younger, I had an apprenticeship in hotel management and as a server. So I always worked with the public. And I noticed, I felt like, like a chameleon. I could be like this with one person and then with the other person. And then I'm like, that's so fake. And I started to think more and more about it. But then what I realized is that we also have this ability to know which aspect of us is helpful in a conversation with a person. Let's say you're working in a restaurant and you may have a table that wants you to be cheerful and to have fun with them. Then there might be another table that is just like, oh, very serious. So when I started to realize that different aspects of me were showing up with those people, that I could pick up what they wanted and needed, then I didn't feel fake anymore, because it was like I was picking up what they wanted and not what I thought they needed. It's a very subtle difference.
Yes, I understand what you're saying. And I think that that's one of the most important things that highly sensitive people need to learn, right? To just wholly be themselves without apology, without fail, and to start loving themselves and just be real when it comes to responses, not the socially accepted responses, not the responses that we think other people want to hear from us, but what our real response is. And I think that that starts with, well, getting to know yourself on a deep level, and then maybe discovering that there might be some blocks that are preventing you from doing that and feeling good about it too.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to remove those. And what we started talking about in emotional freedom techniques, EFT, is one of the methods that can be used to remove these blocks and allow us to flow freely into being who we really are.
I totally agree, because I found first I found out that I was a highly sensitive person, and that was like a big wow, reading Elaine Aron's book first in German and then in English, and it was like, oh, now I understand why I reacted this way. So it was very freeing, but I still had all the things that come with being an HSP. But
Yes.
then when I learned about EFT, emotional freedom techniques, the tapping, and realized that I could use it to deal with my strong feelings when I was overstimulated, that I could calm down my nervous system. It's like, yes, those two go so well together, because EFT is so gentle, and really, I think it's very well suited, like for everyone, but especially for us HSPs.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. So I'd love to talk some more about that. But before we dive into it, there are probably also a lot of people that are watching this now, listening to this, who have no idea what EFT is. And we've shared its emotional freedom techniques. So then you might understand the word, but what does it do?
Okay, so, well, it's a self-applied stress reduction technique. We tap with 2 fingers on acupressure points on our body, like face and upper body and hands. And we basically deactivate the amygdala, the stress center in our brain, and the hippocampus, the memory center in our brain. So negative experiences or feelings are being reduced as we're doing this. We're sending calming signals to tell the body, yes, this memory is coming up, it's painful, but right here, right now, in this moment, I am okay, I'm not in it anymore. So
exactly. And so what EFT does is it helps us to decouple the event from the emotions. So we usually use it with traumatic events, but it can be used for a lot more things. It can also be used for low self-esteem, for instance. But also low self-esteem is usually caused by some sort of traumatic event. It doesn't have to be abuse or rape or an accident or something. Even specific remarks can already be traumatic for a person, especially when it's said at a young age. So what we're doing is we're finding the thing that's the most painful, the thing that really triggers the reaction. And usually those are a set words or maybe a sentence, or it is a specific moment in time or a sequence of specific moments in time. And then we start tapping indeed to acupressure points, and which is why I love this technique so much, being an acupuncturist. Working with these points in a different way, I thought it was brilliant, and it's so effective. And we basically by tapping on our body, which is the physical part, while saying sentences, which are the mind part, and body and mind are connected, we can disconnect the emotions that come up from the memory of the event that was triggering the response or the trauma.
Mm-hmm. And the nice thing is with EFT is there's so many clinical trials that prove that it works, which I find is really important. For me, it was really funny when I first learned about tapping. I was so excited about it, and I was tapping on feeling some loneliness. All my family is in Austria, I'm in Canada. Mm-hmm. So I was tapping for a couple of weeks, and then suddenly I noticed that I stopped biting my nails, which I had been doing since I was 7. And I'm like, I didn't even tap on biting my nails, but I stopped doing it. And I'm like, wow, this works. Yeah. And then I started reading more about, the clinical trials and everything, but I experienced it on my body. It does work. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is. So indeed, it works in that way. It can help you let go of fear. So the fear of rejection, or the fear of being judged, or the fear of not being enough, the fear of not being worthy, the fear of nobody waiting for you to show up on your YouTube channel, making videos and actually watching them. Or it can be a variety of things, and it can be both in your personal life, but it can also be in your professional life. So the possibilities are endless, and the process itself is very simple. It's very safe. Everybody can do it. It doesn't require specific skill. It doesn't require tools or expensive things. It's basically accessible to everybody. It's just that you need to know how to do it. And that's where you usually hire an EFT practitioner, like we both are, to help you do the process and understand the process and know how to do it in the way that it has the biggest results. And when you have done it more than once, then you can also do it yourself. So I often also record videos where I lead people into a tapping session, and then they can just follow along with me. And if they've done it often enough, then they don't even need me and can do it on themselves.
Which is wonderful, because it's a self-help tool that you can use anywhere. Let's say you're at work and you're stressed, you can take a couple minutes and calm yourself down, which for HSPs, I think is really important to have a tool that's right at your fingertips, really, all the time, because you can sit at a meeting and you notice, I should be saying something, I want to say something, but I'm so nervous. You can sit under the table and just start tapping on the side of your fingers and notice how your body is like relaxing, and then you are able to do things that you couldn't do before.
Exactly, yes. So I think now people have a better understanding of what EFT is. So I think it would be awesome to dive a little bit more into what are then the benefits for highly sensitive people. I know we touched upon them a little bit already, but what are the biggest benefits that you've seen for highly sensitive people when they start working with EFT?
I think the biggest benefit is, and when I start working with clients, we usually start in the present. What is affecting you right now? Where are you overstimulated? Where are you overwhelmed? Because that's the only place we have right now. Work on, I get always really nervous when a new client comes in, or I have to ask for the sale. So we look at the feelings that they have to show them how they can create actually bigger pockets of peace and calm where they are not overstimulated and overwhelmed. Because when we have those pockets of peace and quiet where we can think logically, because when we are stressed out, part of our brain can't be logical. We can't, like the frontal cortex literally shuts down. When we can have bigger things like this, what I noticed with myself and with clients, when we're in that state, we can get much more work done in less amount of time. Have you noticed that as well?
Yes, I've seen that as well. I think it's because it also it calms the nervous system, and I think that that is also a big key in everything to do with highly sensitive people, right? Because our nervous system is wired a little bit different, which means that it's just, I always say we are just like a big sponge and we suck everything up from our environment. And by working with EFT, we can remove some of the things that we've sucked up that are not in our best interest anymore. And that frees us up for other things or being more effective in certain areas.
And if we're not overwhelmed overwhelmed today, we get more done. Then the next day there is already, there's less work to do. I'm less overwhelmed because my to-do list is not this long, it's only this long. So I can get more done on the next day. So, and then what I find, if there's less that happened on the day before, I don't have to clean up that stuff, because we usually look at, okay, what happened today? We analyze that. But if we are so calm and focused, there's less things that we need to clean up. So we are really working in the present, clean up the future, and then the past as well. So it makes it easier, and there's more time to do the things that we are really good at.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I always say we are just sort of like a bucket, right? And the bottom of our bucket is our solar plexus. And the top of our bucket is really here, mouth height. And during the day, the things that we pick up as a sponge from our environment, they are what fill the bucket. Mm-hmm. And if we don't know how to empty the bucket, then the only way to empty it is by sleeping. Because in our sleep, we process everything that has happened, and then we sort things, and then we can let things go, and other things we keep on turning and turning and turning and turning. But we make that separation, and at least then our level in the bucket goes down. And as long as we keep doing that and the level doesn't rise to dangerous heights, then we can manage. We are sort of okay. But if our level rises to too high, then when it overflows here at the mouth level, that's usually when we are in a burnout. So by using EFT, we get a tool that allows us to determine and empty out our bucket, at the level of our bucket, and then lower it so that we have more control over how our day goes, how we respond, because we all know that when we have low stress, so a low level in our bucket, and we've slept really well, then when something unexpected happens, it's usually not that big of a problem. Yeah, we have the flexibility to be able to handle it. But if our bucket is quite full and we don't sleep well or well enough, then the tiniest thing has our bucket overflowing, and it can be crying at work, or maybe falling out to your best friend or your partner, or other stressful responses that are only happening because the level in your bucket is too high and you don't know how to empty it in between.
My sons used to be very good at reading those levels. They would say, mom is hungry. Danger level 1, mom is hungry and tired. Danger level 2, mom is hungry, tired, and cold. Danger level 3.
Oh, yes.
And those are things that can really unravel a highly sensitive person, right?
Yes. And we also have the term hangry, which is a combination of hungry and angry. And that's so relevant to me, and judging by how you're nodding, probably also for you. So indeed, when I'm hungry, it's already more of a don't mess with me kind of thing. And when I haven't slept enough and I'm hungry, it's definitely don't mess with me. And if I'm hungry, I haven't slept enough and I'm cold, then you better just keep your mouth shut and walk away. And so the trick for highly sensitive people is to start recognizing those levels themselves. I love how your sons defined it. It's so recognizable. But we also need to define those levels for ourselves. We need to know what signals our body gives for the certain levels, and we need to know what action to take. When we reach those levels, or when we become aware that we've hit a certain level. Because when you know what the level is in your bucket and you are able to control the level in your bucket, then you have control over your day. And most highly sensitive people, to some degree, are control freaks, because we are perfectionists.
Definitely. And you know what, that brings me to one point too, that we need to find out what our level is of how much alone time we need, because we definitely need more alone time than most people. And also to recognize and acknowledge when we have, like if we go on a vacation, that we need to book 2 days or 3 days or whatever works for us in between before we go from vacation to work, because we can even be overstimulated at a vacation where our friends can go the whole day. We may need an hour in the afternoon or in the evening where we are by ourselves, or we need to go home earlier because we just get overstimulated, and that's surprising for many people.
Yes, exactly. So you can get overstimulated from things that you like and from things that you don't like. So even when I used to go, because we talked about this a little bit already, 70% of highly sensitive people is introverted. So they need more alone time, because that's what it means. When you're introverted, you get your energy from being alone. And you like to spend most of your time alone. Socializing is not really your thing. Having to go to a pub to meet friends might be sort of okay, depending on how you're feeling and how much you've slept, but it's not your favorite pastime. You would prefer reading by yourself with a good book, cup of tea, and just the cat in the lap or something. So that's really what introversion is. And I am in the other category. I'm a highly sensitive extrovert. So that's the 30% of highly sensitive people. And extroverted people tend to get their energy when they're around other people. They love spending time with other people. I love to go dancing, for instance, and that really gives me a lot of energy. But still, within the dancing, there are limits that I need to stick to. So when I was younger, we used to go to house parties once a month, because dancing is really also my overflow valve, so to say. So it lets me just let loose, let go of a lot of things. So I love dancing, but I cannot be in the thick of it. I cannot be in the middle of the crowd with everybody pressing up to me and being so tight around me. I cannot do that, even though I'm an extrovert. So that's why I often call myself an extroverted introvert. But I can be at the edge of the space, where there are not so many people, where I have room to breathe, room to dance, to do my dance moves. And then I have the time of my life, because being there and experiencing everything is energizing me. While a true introvert would still not want to be in the edge if possible.
Yeah, it's
so,
like, yeah, don't need that.
But every time we did that, I made sure that the day after I had off from work, so that I could also sort of acclimate, so that I could unwind and let everything go. So even though I love being around other people, and I often really also need to be around people, when I am overwhelmed, I also need alone time. Yeah, so that's very important to remember, even if you are more extroverted. You still need to schedule in regular alone time moments, or at least possibilities for alone time if you need them. If you don't need them and you're an expert at listening to your body, translating its signals, and you know, oh, I can go and dancing this evening, then perfect. But you need to allow space for whatever needs to happen in order to keep yourself in balance.
And it's really interesting, while you were talking about the dancing, I realized something that I never made the connection before. Because when I was younger, we would be going out like very often. But what we did, we went to one bar and then we walked to the next bar, and it would be like 10-15 minutes walking. And I think that 10-15 minutes walking would be good for my nervous system to calm it down again. And then I was ready again, you know, for the action, for the dancing, the music and everything. I never realized that before.
Oh, awesome. So that's yeah, that illustrates my point, right? We need to learn who we are. So that's why what I do with people is in large part discovering your unique user manual. And you need to discover who you are and how it works for you. And I often have people that come up to me and say, but people say I'm a highly sensitive person, but I don't recognize myself in everything. Well, that's not supposed to happen, right? Just like every human is unique, every HSP is also unique. So for some that are more introverted, they will recognize themselves in being a bit more shy and a bit more withdrawn, and they might not like public speaking. They might not like going to networking events if they're a business owner, while the more extroverted ones, have no problems with presenting or speaking on a stage or going to network events. So if those are the criteria that you should not really like it, then you don't recognize yourself in it, because you might be an extroverted, highly sensitive person. But then we also have something that's called the HSS, which is the high sensation seeker. And that is a special branch of high sensitive people. And I know because I'm one. This is like walking a tightrope. On the one hand, you need action. I need liveliness. I need things that keep me inspired, that keep me connected, that keep me interested. So when I was working for a boss, I loved doing many different things so that every day was different and I got to use all of my skills. As an entrepreneur, that's very beneficial to me, because as an entrepreneur, you're all of a sudden everything, from the toilet girl to the director, the IT department, the invoicing department, HR, right? You're everything. So that really works well for me. But at the same time, when I do too much of that, then I need to pump the brakes. Because then I think, now I'm doing too many things and I have too many commitments and there are too many people wanting things from me. And then I feel like, okay. And then I pump the brakes again. But if I then slow down too much, then eventually I'll start to think, well, this is boring.
I know.
How can we make this more lively?
And I find many times, like you said, we have to find the ideal for us, not what works for somebody else. And that's, I think, what both of us are doing with our clients. We help them to find what works best for them, to figure out, okay, I need this much, and also to be open that it can be different at different times of your life, that sometimes, to be more flexible with themselves and more appreciative of the changes, and being okay that there are changes and that it's not always the same. Because I think we try to be so controlling in order to control the overstimulation.
That's a really big part of it, yes. And what I also see happening is when you start working on yourself, when you start to get to know yourself, what a lot of people are afraid of is that they're going to lose their friends. And that can happen, but those are usually not friends, if you know what I mean. They're not real friends. They're people that like to profit from you in general, that treat you like a doormat, that always call upon you because they know you're always there and you'll always help them. But if you're ever in trouble, then they're usually not home. So when you start changing and becoming more you, don't be surprised when those people cannot handle that change, because they cannot manipulate you as easily anymore. And you're not doing everything that you were doing for them anymore. And that makes them not like you so much anymore, which I think is a good thing, because that stops them from using you and the goodness that's you. But it's always good to say, or to tell people to be aware of that this can happen, and to also trust that the more you become yourself, the more you will attract those people to you that like the real you, where you don't have to pretend, where you don't have to wear masks. And when you need them, they're there for you as much as you are there for them.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
only those are real friends, right?
Yeah, I agree. And there's maybe not as many, but you can always count on them.
Yes, exactly. And so we've been talking for a while, and it's been an amazingly interesting conversation, and I feel like we could talk for hours. But I wanted to say to everybody that's listening and that's watching, if you have any questions, if you want to know about things that we said, or maybe even questions that are related or even unrelated to what we are discussing here tonight, please feel free to leave a comment, and to also like and share this video if you feel that it's beneficial for you. Because if it's beneficial for you, chances are very high that someone in your audience, in your network, could also benefit from hearing these things. So ask your questions, share and like. If you are happy with what we're talking today, that will be awesome. And I can also imagine that you guys might want to know more about Karin and where you can find Karin. So Karin, please tell our audience where they can find out more about you.
You can find out more about me on my website, which is www.karingoldgruber.com. So it's very easy. My name, Karin, with an I, not an E. Yeah, and there's all the information there. I also offer a free Let's Chat session. If you're interested in working with me, I always chat with potential clients to figure out if we click, if we connect, and yeah, let's chat and go from there.
Exactly. And so both me and Karin offer a free way to be able to talk to us, to see if we might be a good fit and if we could actually help you. So I'll make sure that the way to contact Karin and also the way to contact me is included in the show notes of this episode, so that you have no trouble finding us and talking to us if after seeing and hearing this episode you feel so inclined. So there's nothing left to do for today to just thank you from the bottom of my heart, Karin, for being here today and having this wonderful talk, because that is also part of us HSPs, right? We crave meaningful discussions and deep conversations about topics that truly matter.
It makes us overflow with joy and happiness. It feels like you're just like this and like, this
Exactly.
is good. And I enjoyed it as well. Thank you.
I'm very glad. So thank you everybody also for being here. I hope that this talk was valuable to you. Don't forget to like, share, or comment if you have questions. And for now, I wish you an amazing rest of your day. And I will talk to you again in the next episode of HSP TV. Bye, everybody.
Bye.